To Road to Punchestown. It's the final series in this road for the 2020-2021 series, and it's going to be a good one, Ruby.
I hope it will, Lydia. We have 5 great days racing in Punchestown, starting tomorrow with the William Hill Champion Chase, Envoi Allen against Monkfish, and it just keeps rolling on all the way to Honeysuckle on Friday and a cracking juvenile hurl on Saturday. So yeah, hopefully it'll be a good show. Yeah,
it's 5 stellar days to pack into one show. So get your seatbelts on because this is going to be fast. Let's start by asking Ruby, what does it take to win at Punchestown? Because I know Cheltenham and Aintree really well. I even feel like I know Leopardstown pretty well, but Punchestown not so much. So explain to me what it takes to win.
Yeah, look, usually by this time of year, Lydia, the ground is quite dry and it does suit horses that can go forward in races and sit closer to the pace. Definitely in the conditions races, maybe in handicaps, you will see a couple during the week coming from well off it. But in the conditions races, it tends to be those around the front end that just keep going that end up winning. And look, we can show it to you with Undersow and Min here 2 years ago at the last festival. 2 mile chase, one coming off the back of run in Cheltenham, one coming from a runaway success in Aintree, and they went hammer and tongs up over the first to see who could get in front. 2 Willie Mullins horses, both myself and Paul Townend, and up over the first. Undersow was just that bit quicker than Main to the second fence. He's in front, and that's the way the race stayed. They ended up finishing first and second. So it does definitely over fences suit horses that go forward. I was lucky enough to win the Gold Cup here several times, and I think at least four of them made the run.
Just using that 2019 race between Undersow and Min as a sort of prism to look at something else. Undersow, that was just his 3rd run of the season. For Min, it was his 5th run of the season. From Cheltenham, he'd been to Aintree and put up his career best performance in between. There is an end of term element, or can be, to these races as well.
Yes, I always made those mistakes. I'd forget that when I was finished each year. And when I pulled up a Main, I was thinking the very same thing. How did I get up on the horse that had put up such a performance in Aintree instead of riding the fresher one? But unfortunately, even as a pundit, I forget to write enough of things down.
And how about the gallop to the first fence? Because I mean, if you contrast it to somewhere like Cheltenham, the first couple of fences you might get in the Queen Mother Champion Chase, how quickly they come, in particular on the new course of the Ryanair or something like that, how quickly that first fence might come. How long is it to the first chase in Punchestown?
Over 2 miles, it is 2 furlongs. You start with your backs to the last. So you imagine you have the whole run in till you get to the winning post. Then you descend past the winning post and climb up to the first fence. So it is the guts of 2 furlongs in a 2 mile chase before you jump anything. Now in a 3 mile chase, the first fence is literally on top of you. Same over 2.5. And over 3.7, there's a chase over 3.7, which starts at the 2 mile start. So again, that's quite a long run to the first fence. But and that might suit Chacun Pour Soi over Allaho, because jumping makes Allaho a fast horse. I'd say Chacun might just be a little bit quicker than him.
So you give us a really good segue into the first day of the 5, the Tuesday of the Punchestown Festival. And Ruby, this first day has got so many good races, but the William Hill Champion Chase, potentially the race of the week. And you've mentioned Allaho, with Rachel Blackmore keeping the ride on that horse after her win on the Ryanair. Paul Townend back on board, Chacun Pour Soi. How do you see the two of those matching up?
Well, look, Willie didn't hide afterwards that he thought maybe they should have made more use of Chacun Pour Soi in the champion chase. So I can see this being a bit like Min and Undersow 2 years ago. It'll be best of luck to the two. You're both going forward. Whichever one of you gets in front, well done. And that's, I can see happening. That might suit Nube Negra, just parked in behind the two of them. But I think both of Willie's horses will attack this.
So if you take a view, early stages, how do you think it's going to pan out, and what would you do on each of them, Allaho and Chacun Pour Soi?
You'd line up and fall over and just hope you're on the faster horse. And you won't really know until you get close to the first fence. But look, if we look at both and their styles of running the last day, so Allaho was in the Ryanair chase. There was a false start the first time. So when he gets back around to line up the second time, he jumps out with Mr. Fisher and Min. And Min is a pretty quick horse. And they rattle down over the first fence, all 3 of them. But Min, or Allaho's jumping, was what stood to him. He was so fast through the air. He was quicker than Min, who was beside him. By the time they get down into the homes, away from the third fence, down the hill, you just look at horses like Mellon, Fakir Dari, Kalashnikov, Tornado Flyer, Fanny and Destraval. they're all to the pin of their collar to go the gallop that Allaho and Min are going. But at the fourth fence, Min is a bit high, Allaho's out through the air. At the fifth fence, Min skews, Allaho's gone further in front. They get to the sixth fence and Allaho has to shorten, he's on a wrong stride. But just watch how fast he is at it from takeoff to landing. And if you look at him at the seventh fence, from the saddle backwards, watch that there's no arch in his back. He rises in front, he doesn't bend behind. And that's what really kind of stands out. He jumps like a 2 miler. 2 miler should jump like that. They get to the 10th fence, then there's a huge spread on the field. Samco's already pulled up. This was end to end. And by the time they got to the 14th, Allaho's a bit low at it, but Min is starting to struggle. And that's before you've gotten to 2 miles. So Allaho had Min beaten up a stick before they got to 2 miles at Cheltenham. Now, I would argue Chacun Pour Soi is a better 2 miler than Min, and it won't be as easy to shrug him off. But at 2 miles in Cheltenham, Allaho had 2.5 milers well and truly stuffed, and he kept going and won really well. But this could be a different race, different ball game, but he's jumping, and it was his jumping that caught Willie's eye. Willie thought, watched him in Cheltenham, he jumps like a 2 miler, we'll give him a go at a 2 mile chase.
That's a really interesting thought from Willie about Allaho, and I'm going to come back to that later, if I may, because it sparked a thought in my head as well for the future. But let's now unpick the Betway Queen Mother Champion Chase, because it features obviously the runner-up to put the kettle on, Nube Negra, Chacun Pour Soi himself, First Flow, and also Silas Emery. Yeah,
it does, but I think Politolog coming out before the race sort of changed this race a little bit. He looked a real front runner. So they lined up and went Rouge Vish, put the kettle on, down the inside, First Flow. Silas Emery on your left in the yellow cap, watch him at the first. He gets it all wrong, and that basically put him out of it. Now, Nube Negra is dropped right in, and Chacun Pour Soi was in the middle of the shot. Hard, like to me, they didn't look to be going that hard. Notebook was quite strong on the bridle, and away from the third fence, you see where Chacun Pour Soi really latches onto the bridle and starts to take Paul Townend. Now, by the time they got to the fourth fence and away from it, Paul is just settled, but Silas Emery is dropped way off the back of the shot on the bend past the stands. Around the corner to the sixth fence, Chacun lights up again and really attacks the jump and jumps it super. He's a little bit keen to the water jump as well when he pops it. He's brilliant at the eighth fence. By the time they get to the ninth, First Flow, he's already beaten. Obviously going left-handed didn't really seem to suit him. Silas Emery's trying to get back into it, but he can't. And I think the race gets really interesting. Well, it did at the day, down from the third last fence even. Obviously, Sore Isle went to go to the inside of Rouge Vif. There wasn't a gap. Chacun Pour Soi got into the position, but there wasn't a gap. And over your eyes, you're thinking there was. He went in off the track. Can't go in off the track.
Opposite. I'm agreeing with you.
Oh, not so bad. Silas Emery gets into pole position. Now, on reflection, watching this race, whatever the pace of the race or regardless, Chacun Pour Soi gets the run of this race. He slips through and put the kettles on inside off the home turn, and he shoots to the second last. And we saw Grenadine winning at the weekend. He's just outside. But you're thinking here, as they go to the second last, the horse in pink is all over the winner. Pings the second last fence, goes by, put the kettle on. You're thinking, how far is he going to win? Paul Townend's only asked him to race for sort of 2.5, maybe 3 furlongs. I was disappointed with him. Jumps the last. If I told you he's going to finish third at the back of the last fence, you're thinking, how? Why? But put the kettle on, battles, Nube Negra gets going, and Chacun Pour Soi fades. I was disappointed with him.
Yeah, well, you and I can argue about the Hill and Cheltenham specifically for Chacun Pour Soi next season. Let's think about him at Punchestown specifically. I mentioned to you before that if he wants to adjust anyway, he'll go right. It did happen at the 5th at the tight old course for the Queen Mother Champion Chase. We know he's won over this course and distance, and he did so under a relatively patient ride in the Champion Novice that he won, but it was a strongly run race. Here, do you think he's going to be more suited by Punchestown than potentially he is by Cheltenham?
Possibly, but I think the way he jumps, he will be suited by the gallop Allaho will go. And it will be a completely different race. Now, I'm sure the Skeletons can argue Nube Negra will hold that form. He's a flat track horse. He was really good in Kempton in a strong enough run race. So he comes into reckoning. But I could probably see Allaho getting to the front. But in my own mind, thinking back, I would have always thought Chacun was too good to beat Allaho in a 2 mile chase. But the more I watched the 2 races from Cheltenham, the less convinced I am.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a hell of a race. I think that Nube Negra is a player. for the reason that Allaho and Chacun Pour Soi are potentially going to take each other on, but also because I think Nube Negra ran really well at Cheltenham. He had to sort of switch round horses, didn't he? And he slightly stumbled after the last as well. I think he did really well to be chasing down, put the kettle on. You saw the way that he jumps through the air again as well. He's a really good chaser, and he's also got pace. So I don't think they're going to shake him off. No,
I don't think they will either. I think it's really exciting, to tell you the truth. I think it'd be a great race to watch. The other question mark is, will they be going a notch faster again? Will Allaho cope with that?
Yeah.
He could be to the pin of his collar. When you're on the bridle, it's much easier to jump. If they go a notch faster, could they put him to the pin of his collar? But it'll be a great race to watch. Paul has the utmost belief in Chacun Pour Soi, and that'll probably ultimately have me siding with him.
Okay, and Killas Amory just could not jump at all. He wasn't jumping a twig for the start at Cheltenham, was he?
Didn't jump a fence, yet somehow got himself onto the tails of them at the back of the third last fence. Is that more reflective of the gallop they went?
I think it probably is. Yeah, I think it probably is. And then he got himself fashioned back onto the back and then made a hash of the second last. And then we've got First Flow. You've mentioned the right-handedness, but is this ground going to be a shade too quick for him? And is the pace just going to be a bit too quick for him?
It could be. You can see him lining up to go, but when Politolog went and Ascot, First Flow didn't get on top of him until they got to Swinley Bottom. I think these could go too fast from early. Maybe he will latch onto them when they turn into the back straight and get into a position by the last ditch. But I think he has the most to prove. Okay,
let's go with your scenario. Chacun Pour Soi manages to beat Allaho. Do you think it's still likely that Willie Mullins might target the Queen Mother Champion Chase with Allaho as well as Chacun Pour Soi going there, as he has indicated that he's thinking, one, by what he said, and two, with this entry for Allaho?
I think the result will determine what Willie Mullins does. And I think if Allaho wins, you could see him, he will be aimed at the champion chase. If he doesn't win, I could see him going back to the Ryanair. But if he wins, I'd say he'll target him with the champion chase.
I suppose, as I was asking the question, I was thinking, I suppose if he's beaten, it's how he's beaten, really, isn't it? Because there'll be...
I think Barron, he's 5 in front and stands on his head at the last or something, and gets chinned. But no, the performer, I think if he wins... it'll be champion chase. I would think. I'd say it'll be fairly self-explanatory when the race is over.
Okay. Well, this bet that I'm putting up is rather reliant on Allaho winning then, I think. Because once Allaho got this entry over 2 miles, I started thinking about the Cheltenham Festival 2022, as you do. And I was thinking, I really like Energamen, but I can't really see that horse running well on the really tight old course because he adjusts so right. But I could see him running quite well on the more galloping new course. So if Allaho's going for the Queen Mother Champion Chase, isn't 14-1 Energamen for the Ryanair a very big price? That was my reasoning, and I'm putting him up as my first and possibly earliest ever bet for the following season in a Road to Cheltenham series. So Energamen at 14-1 for the Ryanair. What do you think?
Yeah, because... the proof is always in the eating of anything. And when you look at what Willie Mullins does, he will try and have a strong horse in as many races as he can. So, if he thinks Allaho could win the champion chase, there's no reason why he won't be targeting Energamen at something else.
Okay. So you're filing that under not absurd, are you?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, might even venture in with it early at the end, say that's a good price.
Mark the date and time, everyone. Right, let's move on quickly while I'm ahead to the Dooley Insurance Group Champion Novice Chase. Now, this is the other absolute belter on the first day of Punchestown because it features Monkfish, Envoi Allen on a recovery mission, and Colreevy.
Yeah, it does. And Franco de Porter's a Grade 1 winner as well. All 4 of them, Grade 1 winner novice chasers, and all are shorter. Monkfish the winner at both. But look, I'm slightly both on a bit of a recovery mission. Monkfish as well, even though he won the Brown Advisory, it didn't blow people away with what they expected, and that was probably because of his jumping. And if we pick him up in Cheltenham, he goes to the second fence, and Paul asks him for a big jump, and he puts down. and changed his mind. He went to the third fence and he was perfect, which he was again at 4, 5 and 6. But if you roll it onto the 7th, he kind of lets fly and his hind end landed on top of him. At the 8th fence then Paul asks him, but the horse puts down again. But he absolutely jumped 9, 10, 11. Not a bother. He gets to the 12th where he's very brave, and Eclat the rear just behind him pecks and gets rid of Rachel Blackmore. And then when he has company over 13, 14, 15, 16, he jumps them all perfectly. Down the hill to the third last fence, which was fence 17, he's still galloping over his rivals, the big breakaway, and Fiddler on the Roof. Jumps that well, jumps the second last well, and then the loose horse gets in on top of him going to that last. They're thinking, what's going to happen here? But he gets himself to the back of it, and he goes away and wins. It wasn't perfect. I thought when he was on his own, his jumping wasn't as good as it was when he had company, but that doesn't really stack up because he made all in Leopardstown. So that's only a theory watching the Cheltenham race that doesn't add up because he had done it in Leopardstown.
I think, he's a big horse, isn't he? He's famous, isn't he? 17 hands, stands out.
Yeah, he is, yeah.
The tight old course, don't you think that he's just going to be much more at home as he was in the Albert Bartlett and will be next year in the Gold Cup? He just wants a more galloping track. So therefore, how will he like Punchestown? Yeah,
look, 3 miles in Punchestown is only a lap and a half. It's a 1.7 mile round. It's a fine big track, no sharp ends. Can't see that being an issue for him. But you would like to see him just get all the jumps spot on rather than being a little bit hit and miss like he was at Cheltenham. But then his biggest rival is coming off the back of a fall. And I never saw this coming. We watched him. You see him here in Fairyhouse winning the bar 1 Drinmore. So down to the second last, shortens up, pings it, and look at the pace he has away from the back of it. And all he's jumping at Down Royal, at Fairyhouse, at Punchestown have been spectacular. He went to Cheltenham in the Marsh Novices Chase, and it just didn't. I don't know why. He jumped the first quite well, a little bit high at the second, gets on then to the third fence where he's very good, and the fourth fence, it's just a novice fall. He lets fly, gets his feet on top of the fence and crumples over. He didn't save himself because he'd never had to save himself, and he wasn't expecting to save himself. And he'd probably have learned from it. It was disappointing, but that's all that caught him out. He just didn't know how to save himself because he was never in that position before.
Wasn't he a bit too buzzy, of course? He potentially have been unsettled by having moved from Gordon Elliott's to Henry de Bromhead's. He looked a bit buzzy on the way to post, which is not something that we'd necessarily seen before. And Henry has since reported that he's more settled in the yard.
Yeah, possibly did, but it didn't seem to upset Sir Gerhard or Quilixius, who are younger horses than him.
Horses are individuals, though, aren't they?
No, they are, of course. They are, of course. So maybe that was it. Maybe it was Cheltenham. Arguably, last year in the Ballymore, was he as impressive as he had been in his novice hurdles before he went there?
I think he was.
Was he?
Yeah, I think
yes, well, they did do him for his wind afterwards, so they must have thought so.
Okay. And Rachel Blackmore's on board for the first time as well?
Yeah, that shouldn't... The horse I watched before Cheltenham, to me, looked like a horse that anybody could ride over a jump. She just looked bomb-proof, and I still think he didn't know how to save himself because he never was in that position before, and he would have learned from that. But it'll be a really good race, won't it? I
agree. But are we forgetting Colreevy? I think she could go really well here.
Yeah, and I think going back right-handed will suit her. She was good in the Paddy Power Mares chase when she beat Ellie May, but she jumped good and straight early on. Second fence to the sixth fence, she was dead straight. Look at any one of them. But when she got into the back straight, she started going right, markedly right. And she launched at the 7th. She was right at 8, 9, 10, and 11. When she started going, she just kept going right. And ultimately jumps the last well and battled really hard to beat Ellie May. You think going back up in triple suit her, and you think going right-handed will suit her. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know if it's the last time we see her. She probably could go to stud, but she's been one hell of a race for her owners.
She's been fantastic. Is she going to be putting the pace of the race here, or is Paul Tannen going to be wanting Monkfish right up there?
I'd say both could go forward. Monkfish always goes forward, so does Colreevy. So I'd say they'll both be ridden what way suits them best.
Okay.
Which would leave Envoi Allen follow them and Franco Deport following Envoi Allen.
Oh, yes. Do you give any chance to Franco Deport?
I think going up in triple suit him, he got completely outpaced in Leopardstown. And again, look, I'm always saying to you, if you get to write things down, 2 mile novice chasers in Leopardstown often tend to want a bit further, especially the way he won it.
Let's move on to the Ecom Merchant Solutions Champion Novice Hurdle. Is this a match between Blue Lord and Echoes in Rain?
Yeah, look, no appreciate it, unfortunately, and it probably would. And Paul has gone for Blue Lord. Won his maiden hurdle, no match for Bob Ollinger and Ace. If you watch him in the Supreme, he lined Darrell Jacob Rudd, he lined him up down the very inside at the back of the field. And, you know, he was grand. But when you flick away from the stands down to the third hurdle, you just see how keen Blue Lord starts to get running down the hill to the third hurdle. And again, when they get to the top of the hill and turn the face down to the third last, down the inside, you see how high Darrell's hands are off his withers. He was quite keen. He followed Appreciated through from the third last to the second last. And you're thinking, God, Blue Lord is the danger to Appreciated. But when Appreciated turned on the overboard or the overdrive, all of a sudden it was race over. And Blue Lord took a tired fall at the last. So, look, Paul has gone for him. Small field, no obvious pace. Maybe he'll change tactics completely on him and use it and let him run rather than trying to hold him. And Echoes in Rain. Look, when we saw her 2 runs back at Punchestown, she jumped out in front, but she just blitzed off with Danny Mullins and went way too fast. And eventually the real deal and Gannett Patti catch up with her and pass her out. Now, there was a change of tactics on her then in Nace on the 28th of February when she sat in second to Razzle Dazzle Love and settled quite well after jumping 1 or 2 hurdles. By the time they got into the home straight, Paul Townend moves out and she goes to challenge. And that's Belfast Panther that's coming behind her. And she scoots away. Now, we've seen him win the county hurdle and win an entry since. And then when she went to Ferryhouse against the Geldings, Paul sat her right, dropped her into the back of the field. She switched off, travelled through the race really well, pinged the second last. The Devils coachman, Colin Mustard, MC Muldoon, Master McShee, Desir DeLarge are all in the shot. But she just sprints away from them like they're standing still. I thought that was a really impressive performance. I probably would have ridden her. Paul has gone for Blue Lord. I'm only watching him. He's ridden them both.
So the title race, the jockeys' title races, or at least 2 of them, are going to be decided over these 5 days. In Britain, of course, we've had our winners. Paul Nicholls has won a 12th trainer's title. Harry Skelton has won the jockey's title for the first time. Danny McMenamin is our conditional jockeys champion. Over there, Ruby, everything is not wrapped up yet.
No, Paul Townend leads Rachel Blackburn by 4. Obviously, he's been out injured since Ferryhouse, and she's got that lead down from 10 to 4. And Jamie Codd and Patrick Mullins are tied for the amateur title. Simon Torrance will be champion conditional. Looks like Jodie Townend will be champion lady rider. She's 1 in front of Anya O'Connor, who's injured, and a couple in front of Maxine O'Sullivan. So Jodie could win her first. But the jockeys' titles will be interesting, and Tuesday is a pivotal day, I think. If Paul has gotten it right on Blue Lord, that'll put him 5 in front. But if he's picked wrong, and Allaho beats Chacun Pour Soi, and Envoi Allen beats Monkfish, leaving the races on Wednesday, Rachel could be 2 behind, and then it becomes a race. I think what happens on Tuesday is pivotal in that battle myself. And as for Patrick and Jamie, that'll go on for the week. They'll have really good rides in all the bumpers from Tuesday to Saturday, and I can't see that one being decided till much later.
This has got you chatting on social media as well. Jason Budd says 2 very pivotal rides on Tuesday. If she wins on Allaho and Envoi Allen, and I think she does, then all to play for, I'd say. So he's of your mind. Kevin Hartley and Mark Smith just want to see a good, fair fight. Mark Smith says, I agree, but it depends if Paul can ride with the pain. He might have to give up graciously if he struggles to give his mounts the best he can. Good luck to them both, I say. And Mark says, yeah, absolutely. Best of luck to them both. It's great for the sport. How fit, how ready is Paul? Because obviously he's had to come back, hasn't he, in order to defend his title, and would naturally want to come back to ride horses of this quality at Punchestown.
Yeah, exactly. Naturally, he'd be coming back either way. I watched him riding out on Saturday morning, and to me, he looked 100%. Riding, especially with a foot injury, the actual riding horses is easier than walking. I think the last year I was in Cheltenham, I had something similar, but the walking was the hardest part. Riding horses, put your foot in the air in a certain direction, and it's fine. It'll be getting in now the parade ring, that'll be harder work for him.
Let's move on to the Wednesday, shall we? The second day of Punchestown, and start with the Irish Mirror Novice Hurdle. What do you make of this? We've got many horses reopposing from the Albert Bartlett, which of course was won by Vanillier.
Yeah, and he was a really good winner, Lydia. He lined up very handy on that occasion, jumped out bang on the pace down to the first hurdle. Statler actually made a mistake at the first, which I didn't notice on that occasion. But Vanilla was right up on what was an okay gallop. I don't think it was frantic. And Golo, the grey on the outside, was quite keen. I thought it was a steadily enough run race. and had to get back to the third last hurdle. Not a whole pile has changed. Down the hill to the second last, Vanilla still in front, and Golo, Fakira, right in behind in the red cap is Statler. In the maroon colours of Chickenstown towards the back is Torygraph. But Vanilla had been in position A most of the way, and he's just started to build it up and ground these out. Now, I suppose you look back through Vanilla's form, it was always there. There was a couple of disappointing runs in the middle, maybe when Gavin Cromwell's horses weren't flying. But, you know, this was a taken performance. I don't know. I don't think he's as solid as Flooring Porter is later in the week. And I think he could be susceptible. I'm not sure Statler ran his race. And I'm going to explain that one again in a little while. But look, Vanilla was a good winner, but I'd be willing to oppose him.
Just the flip side to that, obviously things hadn't gone well for him at the Dublin Racing Festival. He'd had a problem there that evening. He wasn't a well horse. He then came to Cheltenham. He went on a long way out, which on the new course tends to be something that's not a good idea, but he was able to do that and stay on and win. And he was a relatively lightly raced profile for the race as well. Those two indicators, don't they suggest he might be very good?
Yeah, he could be. I mean, Indo was pretty much the same. I mean, we know what he did. He came back here and beat Allaho in this very same race, and we know what he's done since. But look, I think if you go back to the Dublin Racing Festival, to the 2 mile and 6 novice hurdle, and we'll pick it up between the third last and the second last hurdle, the ones dropping out of the shot are Vanilla is dropping out, Ashdale Bob, and Cape Gentleman. They're the three that don't necessarily have a hard race. Cape Gentleman won the Dovecot, Ashdale Bob won in Fairyhouse, Vanilla won the Albert Bartlett. Now, the other ones that have gone forward are Statler, Gentleman's Game, Shadow Rider, Ghana Petit, Fakira, Fun Night, and Gerhard the Mesnil. They all got beaten since. I just think 2 miles and 6 in that ground in Leopardstown, those first 7, this race left its mark on them. And I think Statler at Cheltenham underperformed. I think Gerhard the Mesnil wouldn't have beaten Bob Bollinger, but I think he underperformed a little bit. Fakira underperformed in the Albert Bartlett. I think a lot of those horses underperformed, and those that didn't have a race at the back bounced out of it. So I can see this being a different race on Wednesday.
Okay, that's interesting. How about Galopin de Champs, who was such an impressive winner of the Martin Pipe, the horse you fancied at the Cheltenham Festival? Yeah,
I'm going to take all the credit for that. Imagine having to tip a 25 to 1 winner to break even for the week. But look, he jumped out good and handy alongside his stablemate Gentleman to me in the Martin Pipe, and they were right up there on the pace, handy down the inside. Jumped super, travelled really well, top of the hill. He's 4th or 5th position, 4th or 5th down the inside. But he just travelled so well. Off the home turn, he started to quicken up, and Sean O'Keefe waited until the opposition came to him before he really committed him. Absolutely pinged the last. And the first 2 pulled a long way clear of the rest of them. I thought it was a good performance. He comes in a similar path as Kilcruit. Kilcruit won this and came and won the Albert Bartlett, or won the Martin Pipe, and went and won the 3 mile novice hurdle in Punchestown. I think this horse will stay, and I think he's a big shout. I think he will give Vanilla a race.
And how about Tell Me Something Girl?
Interesting. Look, we watched Rachel Blackmore on her in Cheltenham. We'll pick her up, turning in, you see how far back she is, or the second last, see how far back she is. Scoots through the field going to the last hurdle. But to go from 2 miles and 1 to 3 miles, big step.
After the Dublin Racing Festival, my idea of the winner of this race was Gentleman's Game. I didn't, however, anticipate him running at Fairyhouse in between.
No, and I thought the race at Leopardstown left his mark, and he went to Fairyhouse behind Ashdale Bob, and you can pick him up turning in. He was a short enough price favourite, but he never, to me, looked like he was going to win this. He was 4 to 5. Yeah, Decimation and Ashdale Bob always looked to be going better than him, and he ultimately failed out of it. Now, that race was on the 4th of April. Whether he's gotten over it by the 28th of April, 24 days, maybe he has. But he looked a tired horse to me at Fairyhouse.
Okay, let's move on to the Ladbrokes Punchestown Gold Cup, shall we? And that features a rematch between Minella Indo and Boum Photo from the Cheltenham Gold Cup. And also, of course, Kemboy ran in it, and he has won this race before. Yeah,
he did actually. Kemboy is probably the pace angle here, Lydia. I made it on him when he won this race. You see him in the Gold Cup, he jumps out very forward. Vanilla Indo juts outside him. Boum Photo was in the same place he was when he won 2 previous Gold Cups. It was a strong enough race. round to the third fence, Kemboy does what Kemboy can do, land the third fence. And Manila Indo's just outside him. At the fifth fence, you can see they've got a good gallop because Boum Photo is quite back off them. And then the race steadied by the time they got up to the seventh because Boum was caught up behind them. Kemboy made a mistake at the eighth, which is, just what Kemboy can do. And the third, when they got back to the 13th fence though, Kemboy is flat out. Maybe it's going left-handed. Maybe it's just the quality of a Gold Cup. I'm not really sure, but he was struggling then, whereas Manila Indo was always in control of this race, and he was going really strongly. Boum Photo's moved on to the back of him. By the time they get down to the 19th, Manila Indo was just really clean, but Boum Photo's starting to get a bit lower, rushed out through it, third last fence. Manila Indo pings it. Boum Photo gets out of the pocket. He has a clear run, but he doesn't have the gas to stay there, and Plutar put him back in. If you're going well enough, when you get out, you'll stay out, but he wasn't. So Blackmore pushed Paul back in. But Plutar was never going to get by Manila Indo, and Boum Photo just keeps coming behind him. And watch Manila Indo's here, second last, again at the last, has a good look at what he's doing. I think he'd plenty left in the tank. Now, I am also of the opinion that whatever way you run the Gold Cup, 3.25 miles, it can leave its mark on a horse as to how fresh they are. And that would be in the back of my mind. Kemboy, I know he ran it, but he was beaten too early to have had an effect. And Des Obeaux is coming in here off the back of a really good run in entry, just like Kemboy did.
Yeah, and when Kemboy and Boum Photo met each other here in 2019, again, for similar reasons, Kemboy, wasn't he a bit fresher of the two?
Yeah, he'd unseated at the first in the Gold Cup and then had gone to entry and won a bit like Des Obeaux won. If you watch Des Obeaux in entry, we'll pick him up when Mr. Fisher falls at the first fence in the back straight, runs seats, leaves Des Obeaux in front. Watch how he adjusts a little bit to his right at the next two fences. So going right-handed, he's a dual King George winner, might suit him. But it's what he does from the second last. Jumps the second last well, and Harry Cobden starts to extend him, and he lengthens away down to the last fence, pings the last and quickens up. Sam Twiston-Davis is back on him. He's won a King George on him, so that's not a bad thing. And he's definitely a fresher horse. He's a rating of 170, and he could give these a rest.
Yeah, was quicker through the air with those cheek pieces. Will they work again, do you think, in your experience?
I think they will, yeah. I think they will.
Boum Photo was just a bit scratchy in terms of his jumping in the Gold Cup. He made mistakes in this race a couple of seasons ago. Is actually his Achilles heel? It seems weird to say that about a dual Gold Cup.
Yeah, it can be. But he was obviously well beaten here by Kemboy, but the year before that, he was going to win the 3-mile novice chase.
Let's reflect on the Savills Chase, where Kemboy was always prominent, the kind of tactics we're probably going to see from him here. And Mellon was ridden more patiently. And as we saw here, and we also saw from Mellon in the Ryanair, if he can't bowl along and get in front and get into his rhythm, he just doesn't like it, does he?
No, it doesn't seem to suit him. Now, we Fakir Dudari in as well. You watched him in entry, he was sat in, so you're thinking he probably won't go forward in a 3-mile chase, whereas Mellon probably will go with Kemboy. And Mellon will get to do what you think he needs to do, and that's get on the front end. We saw him at the Savills Chase when he went down the back straight, jumped from fence to fence, missed the second last, rallied back to Kemboy, and a Plutar Kim beat them both. So I think in this particular race, with only the 7 runners, Kemboy has a fair chance of, or not Kemboy, Mellon will have a chance numerically of at least being able to try and get where he needs to be.
Fakir Dudari, he's tried 3 mile in the Savills Chase. Possibly he wasn't running well at the time, but does he shape like a horse who wants 3 miles to you?
He was only a 5-year-old at the time too. He's now 6. He's always looked like a stayer to me. He beat Nutswell really well at entry, but you still have to remember he's still so young. He's 6. He won't be 7 until next Christmas. I could see him being a stayer next year. And even though he's only 4 months older than he was at Christmas, it's a long time in a horse's life.
So, what's got you talking on social media? Is it the William Hill Champion Chase? Is it the Punchestown Gold Cup? Is it Monkfish taking on Envoi Allen? No, it's the bumper. We asked, will Kilcruit turn around the Cheltenham form with Sir Gerhard? And you said lots of things. Let's start with Lee Gigi, who says, Kilcruit will turn around Cheltenham form with Sir G. Ridden closer, stalk then pounce. No easy lead this time for R. Blackmore. He sounds so confident, but then he follows up with, does Ruby agree? Rather plaintively. Then we've got Adam Hughes, who says, Sir Gerhard is the faster horse. I think he'll beat Kilcruit again. Black Old Punter says, Sir Gerhard looked to be idling a bit. Reckon he might still have something under the bonnet. Then there's quite the conversation between Kevin, Craig and Ryan. Kevin says, I think not the only time that week Blackmore rode them to sleep. If Paul's on the ball, I think he's on the better horse. Craig says, faster horse beat the better stayer. Blackmore injected pace around the bend. Kilcruit took a while to get going. You have to fancy Gerhard unless they take it up with Kilcruit and turn it into a stamina test. Ryan Clark is not only confident about who wins, he's going to play the distances. He says they know the crack on Kilcruit now, wins by 3. And Kevin says, I agree, Kilcruit is definitely the stayer of the two. How do you see the matchup of the week?
Well, we Patrick on Sir Gerhard and Derek O'Connor on Kilcruit. How do I see it? Rachel did dictate the race in the front, there's no doubt about that. But when she turned at the top of the hill, she allowed Sir Gerhard to roll, which got Kilcruit going as fast as he was able. But she did commit plenty early. She was starting to ask when she got in the dip before she got to the wings of the second last hurdle. And had she waited till she got up into the home straight to commit Sir Gerhard, I think he'd have won going away. And I think the way I'm explaining it is possibly the way Patrick Mullen saw it as well, because he's gone for Sir Gerhard over Kilcruit, and he would have had the choice. Sir Gerhard hung on by getting away, and Kilcruit came after him. But I think Sir Gerhard could be the better horse.
I agree. Sir Gerhard all day long, as Badly Walsh would say, all day long. So let's move on now to day 3, which is the Thursday. And the centrepiece of that day, in many ways, is the Ladbrokes Champion Stayers Hurdle. And Ruby, it features, of course, Flooring Porter, who carried all before him, or all in his wake, actually, more accurately, at Cheltenham.
Yeah, he does. And there's a lot of the same horses, Lydia, with the exception maybe of Ronald Pump, where he'd turn up, and Heaven Help Us is in here as well, but she's also in the Mayor's Hurdle on Saturday. So where exactly she'll go, I don't know yet. But look, if we do go back to the Stayers Hurdle and go to the start, Flooring Porter jumps out quite smartly. But the horse that followed him immediately out of the start were Little Rockefeller, Vindication. And if you look for the 2 maroon colours in mid-division of Gigginstown House, that's Beacon Edge and Fury Road, they're sort of halfway. Sorry, the Burley is behind him and the Storyteller is behind that. So Flooring Porter in this race on Thursday could get an uncontested lead again. Sarah Burley made a mistake at the 3rd hurdle, but if we flick it forward to the 8th hurdle, you will see, or the 5th hurdle even, you'll see just how quick Flooring Porter was going, because Sarah Burley, Reserve Tank and Bacardi's are all niggled away on landing. So he didn't by any manner of means get an easy lead. He went a really good gallop, and you know, that's what's really impressive about this performance. And if you flick it forward to the 8th hurdle, you'll see the stretch he has in the field. From Flooring Porter in front, right to the back, these horses were really spread out. It was an end-to-end race. And then off the home turn, Flooring Porter is going best. He quickens up off the bend. Beacon Edge, who would travel really well through the race and maybe coming to a flat track like Punchestown, could be expected to get a bit closer, might be his biggest danger. I don't particularly see Punchestown suiting Sarah Burley the way he stays, but Flooring Porter was brilliant. He's only a 6-year-old. Danny Mullins rode him on that occasion. Jonathan Moore will be back on him on Thursday, but he absolutely pinged the last, and Danny never even had to give him a slap behind the saddle. He's won really well, and I don't see what's going to beat him, to be honest with you.
Is there anything too? I know it was run at a good pace, but Bartholis Nagara Oscar, who unfortunately tipped up in quite a good position for a stayer in a strongly run race. The other key players were much further back. It was horses that finished well beaten, that were the closest attenders of Flooring Porter. Might one of them change their tactics?
They might, being Punchestown, they might jump out and sit closer to him. But the horses that went with him in Cheltenham paid the price for it. So, yeah, look, they will try and keep a bit closer to him, but I don't really know will they be good enough. Heaven Help Us would be the obvious one. She made it in the Coral Cup, but it's a big step from a handicap to a grade 1. And to be honest with you, the Mayor's Hurdle on Saturday looks slightly more open than this. I don't think there's a Flooring Porter in that. So that would look the easier race. Look, of the other horses, maybe Ronald Pump, and we haven't seen him since he chased home Honeysuckle last December in the Hatton's Grace Hurdle at Ferryhouse. And he did chase her all the way to the line. And she got first run, maybe in a Stolly run race, and he's come at her. He fell at the last in the Lismullen Hurdle when he was beaten behind Sarah Burley, but he was second to Lisnagar Oscar last year. Now, he did need that run in the Lismullen Hurdle, and having not run since the end of November, there's a chance he might need the run in this race too.
Yes, he's had a setback, hasn't he, since then? And also, wasn't Beacon Edge intended to run at Fairyhouse and in the end didn't? So this is very much plan B for him.
It is, but might have been coming quick enough and the ground was quite dry. I'd say they just left him for this, ultimately.
Most of them are fresh as well, bar for listener Oscar then, because he's been to Aintree en route as well.
He has. It'd be interesting. He was left in this race. He could have been taken out last week. It'll be interesting to see if he comes. But look, I thought he was running well in the stairs when he fell, but I was disappointed with him behind Time Hill.
So let's move on, Ruby, to the Ryanair Novice Chase. That's over 2 miles, and it features Energumen, who unfortunately was unable to take part at Cheltenham due to a setback.
Yeah, and look, he could maybe have made Fairyhouse, Lydia. I know we were going to Cheltenham, he was back riding out. So it was a minor setback, but enough to cause him to miss that. Willie kept him for this race. 2 miles will suit him. And I think going right-handed, from listening to you believe will suit him as well. But if you watch him in his last start in Leopardstown, he lined up and made the run, and Captain Guinness, who we saw to the forefront of the arc at Cheltenham, sat just behind him all the way, and he went a good gallop. But I can see what you mean. If we play it onto the fourth fence, look for the horse in blue, Energumen jumps out to his right a little bit, that's when he has to shorten. So going right-handed in Punchestown, it's not going to inconvenience him. He jumps the third last, which is the ninth fence, really brilliantly. He's a really good jumper. Captain Guinness looks like he's coming to challenge him, going to the second last, but he gets it wrong and ends up on the floor, and then Energumen is left to come home in a bit of a solo. It was a really impressive performance. Can you see it, Captain Guinness putting it back up to him? I don't know. He ran well enough in the arc and Cheltenham, Captain Guinness, I think. I mean, if you look at the race again, between the second and third fences, you can see where he starts to bolt with Rachel Blackmore and ends up taking all mankind on, going to the third. Just when she gets him settled again, when they face into the back straight, going to the sixth fence, Nico de Bonville decides, no, Rachel, you're not going to get it that easy. He moves up and sets Captain Guinness alight again, which to me is good riding. But he ends up taking on all mankind. Shishkin swoops by them all, going to the third last, and it's race over. But to Captain Guinness's credit, he does battle back from the back of the last to get by all mankind on the run to the line. But I just can't see him having run against Energumen twice already, been good enough to beat him now.
How about quicker ground, 2 miles, Punchestown, at a track which favours horses that can be positive? I know Energumen can, but I wonder whether these are the absolute right conditions for Captain Guinness and not quite right for Energumen, even though it's right-handed.
Yeah, it could be that way, but I can't imagine that Paul Townend is going to take back out of a duel with Captain Guinness. And if it comes down to stamina, it'll most definitely suit Energumen, who's won over 2.5. The other horse that's in it with a chance maybe is Janadin. He cropped up at Fairyhouse in the underwriting exchange novices chase, I think it is now. It was traditionally the Power Gold Cup, and then it was the Ryanair, I think it's the underwriting exchange now. And he was very good, turned into the home straight behind Asterion Forlange. Franco de Port is just behind him. He'd fallen behind Envoi Allen, or Monkfish, in Leopardstown at the Dublin Racing Festival. Jumped the third last really well. Pricks his ears going to the second last with Jody McGarvey, and again at the last, and he won quite snug. He had 3 runs at 2 miles for William Mullins over hurdles and won all 3 times, won on the 3 occasions. So look, 2 miles on good ground might really suit him. And if Captain Guinness and Energumen do happen to take each other on, he'll be coming along behind them.
But he makes mistakes. Did he beat a couple of horses who are tired from being at Cheltenham? I'm thinking of Franco de Port and Asterion Forlange. Was he flattered at Fairyhouse, essentially? Possibly,
but he did go and win it, and he is possibly, he can't be any fresher than Energumen, but he could be fresher than Captain Guinness.
And just coming back to Energumen, I mean, I love the horse, and I've put him up for next year's Ryanair on the basis that he should be able to handle the new course, a more galloping left-handed track. But the ground, is that a worry for you?
No, there's rain forecast tomorrow morning, I think, here in Ireland, and a bit more through the week. So, and it's well watered. No, I think it'll be fine.
Let's move on to the Friday, shall we? And the centrepiece there is the Paddy Power Champion Hurdle. And this, Ruby, should be an absolutely sumptuous race because it's really set up to have lots of different angles coming into it. We've got Honeysuckle, Sharjah, Epitante reopposing. We've got Goshen going right-handed. We've got Abracadabras, who's bounced back at Aintree. Jason the Militant, who looked as though he might favour going this way round. It's a really interesting race.
It is. It's a cracking race, and I suppose a lot of it, Lydia, does revolve around the Champion Hurdle in March, and how that race set up. And look, obviously, you had Silver Streak and Not So Sleepy jumped out in front, but so did Goshen and Aspire Tower just behind them. So you have the two of those, so we're guaranteed a bit of pace. Goshen jumped the first well, and Honeysuckle sat just behind them. Abacadabra, Sharjah, Epitant, they all sat in behind that. But I thought that was really having pace to a race like this is a huge thing, and we should have it with Goshen. Now, when we get to the third hurdle, obviously, Abacadabra's falls as he just seems to overjump or whatever he does wrong. But when he lands, keep your eye on Goshen, you see him heading off to his right, and that's where his problems start with Jamie Moore. And when the camera switches before they get to the fourth hurdle, you can see he's nearly halfway up Cleve Hill. He just didn't play ball at all. But look, when the race gathered momentum down the hill, it was really interesting to watch away from the third last. Rachel was wide and Honeysuckle, Aspire Tower was in front of her, Not So Sleepy is going backwards, and Epitant moves into the pocket behind Silver Streak. Sharjah moves in with him on the inside of Honeysuckle as they go to the second last, but Rachel has a clear run on Honeysuckle. Aspire Tower makes a bit of a mistake in the second last, but you could argue Epitant gets caught in the pocket all the way from the second last until they're halfway up to the last hurdle. Robert Power keeps close to Tom O'Brien. Paul Townend moves on to the back of Robert Power and keeps that gap closed off the bend as well. And Aidan Coleman doesn't really get out from behind him until Honeysuckle is well and truly gone. Now, he still can't get, but Epitant still can't get by Sharjah, which is the disappointing part. But with a clearer run, you could argue maybe she would have, but that still doesn't put her in front of Honeysuckle. And I just thought Honeysuckle was breathtaking in the Champion Hurdle. I thought her jumping was slicker than we ever saw before, and I thought it was a career best, and horses have a great record coming back from Cheltenham to Punchestown in this particular race.
I very much agree. She was superb in it. And I would also argue that I think Epitant, given a clearer run, could have finished second, but quite a comfortable beaten second. Is there anything about Punchestown that can jostle that form around at all?
Well, maybe it suits speedier horses, but not really with the likes of a Goshen in there that you think is going to go a gallop. We saw him in Wincanton going right-handed, where he was much happier. We see him in the back straight in Wincanton, where he gets in charge of that race, and he would look the obvious front runner in this race. So there's a chance that he would be allowed to get on his feet and get galloping. They're not going to take it off him early. So look, I think he would be allowed to bring the race, but he'll bring it a really strong gallop. So no, I don't think that it's going to suit a speedier horse and having a slower one. And I think she'll be hard to beat. Obviously, Abacadabra was really good at Aintree. Jason the Militant unseated Rachel Blackmore in the back straight. He jinked right and her body weight was gone in the wrong direction. But then the loose Jason the Militant really helped Abacadabra down the home straight. He jumped the second last really well, misses the last. But, when Jack Kennedy picked him up, he quickened up and then he pulls up. So you're thinking, maybe, he could have been the one in Cheltenham. But if you just go back to the Dublin Racing Festival, and we'll just play it back for you here, away from the second last, Honeysuckle's in front, that's Abacadabra behind her, and she's just going further away from him. She's an outstanding mare, and to be honest with you, I love watching really good horses, and I'd be hoping she caps the season off in perfect style.
Where does Rachel sit her? I mean, you just painted the scenario whereby Goshen goes out in front on going right-handed, where he feels happy. Where is she going to be, Rachel and Honeysuckle?
Well, I think Jason the Militant will go very handily, and so will Aspire Tower. So I can see Rachel in a similar position to the Champion Hurdle, fortish, and she'll ride it with a little bit of room. She won't be wanting to get boxed in because she probably doesn't have an instant turn of foot to get herself out of it. She'll ride it with a little bit of room all the way. Third hurdle early on as the race thins out in as far as the second section. And by the time she gets to the last, she'll be in front right over again the inside rail, jumping the inside section.
And how about the doughty Bouvoudère? Because he was broadsided by Jason the Militant once that horse was loose, and probably 2 miles. I mean, he's won this race before. 2 miles is still better all of his career than 2.5.
Yeah, I thought watching him in Aintree, was your chance going 3 miles with him?
Really? Right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was I know, could be wrong. That's just the way I saw it. I think he's unlikely. He's a 10-year-old now. I think it's unlikely. I don't know. That'll be my thought on it. Would you chance him in this remake?
That's really interesting. Well, we'll be able to pick that up next season, won't we, with him potentially. Let's move on to the Alana Holmes Champion Novice Hurdle. And this features a rematch, if it is one, of the Ballymore Novices Hurdle between the winner, Bob Ollinger, who was so impressive, and the runner-up, because there had to be one, Gaillard de Menil.
Yeah, and I suppose we're kind of maybe billing it as a rematch, but is it really? Look, I was a Bob Ollinger fan all along, from when he won his maiden hurdle in Navan. I thought he was really impressive. He was very good in Ace and the Lawlers, and at Cheltenham, he travelled like the best horse. And I must say, the impression he created off the home turn when Rachel Blackmore opened him up definitely was one that lasted on me. And she got a great run, or she gave him a great ride, right down on the outside of Brave Man's Game. She had Gerhard and Mesnil in behind Brave Man's Game, but she was pulling a roller off the home turn, and she opened this horse up and away he went. Punchestown will suit him, and look, as hard as Gerhard and Mesnil is going to try, I can't see him turning it around.
No, I thought Bob Ollinger, he was one of the horses that made the biggest impression on me. He's certainly the horse that made the biggest impression on me in the paddock when he walked in at Cheltenham. It was one of those moments where I was kind of, whoa, it was the first time I'd ever seen him. And then to put a performance that matched his looks well, I'm a massive fan of his. How about Dusart? Nicky Henderson sends over this horse who has had an interrupted season, is lightly raced, which can be an advantage at this time of year, and definitely showed promise at Aintree, even though he was beaten.
Yeah, and look, Belfast Banter, who won the county, beat him. Now, Belfast Banter was no match for Echoes and Rain and Nace before that. Maybe he's improved out of all recognition. Dusart does want to go well up in trip. He beat Soaring Glory in November in his maiden or novice or whatever you want to call it. He could run well, but I just don't see him being in Bob Ollinger's league.
Well, it all comes to a conclusion on the Saturday, the 5th day of the Punchestown Festival, and we're going to have a look at a couple of the races, starting, Ruby, with a race you've name-checked a couple of times, the Coolmore Kew Gardens Irish EBF Mares Champion Hurdle, and it looks wide open to me.
It does. It looks really competitive on paper. Now, look, some of these mares have different options, but I could see a strong case for arguing why you should run each of these in this race. Look, Burning Victory, who we haven't seen since she was a fortuitous winner of the Triumph Hurdle when Goshen tipped up. But it was only her second start over hurdles, and she was going to be a really good second, whatever way you look at it. Concertista, who just got chinned in the Mares Hurdle at Cheltenham. Obviously, there's no Black Tears in this race. Black Tears just nabbed her on the line, which was a bit disappointing, but she's still a pretty good mare. And Willie's third one could be Stormy Island, who made a really pleasing comeback run for Willie when she won at Ferryhouse. Bit tired when she got to the last hurdle at Ferryhouse, but she got the job done. And there's a few ex-Willie Mullins mares that make it even more interesting. And the first one being Lorena. She's trained by Cormac McFarrell now, but I'd say there's plenty of question marks over Lorena.
We've had a tweet about Lorena. This is from John Ingleson, who says, really hoping Lorena does a Stormy Island and is rejuvenated to former glories for going back in Ireland. But ignoring the inglorious grammar, John thinks that simply setting foot in the Emerald Isle can spark an improvement.
Not sure about that, but look, whatever way you look at Stormy Island, she had decent form. Lorena had burst blood vessels on her last couple of starts for William Mullins. She did the same for Paul Nichols. That just wouldn't be for me.
Okay, how about the others then that are in the running?
Yeah, and they're the interesting ones. Heaven help us. See her in the Coral Cup, booked out and made all to win the Coral Cup. I was stuck to my seat actually watching it. I couldn't see a horse doing it, but Richie Condon and Paul Hennessy most certainly managed it. Mrs. Milner was a brilliant winner. The Pertemps quickened up really well. Had the assistance of a loose horse to keep her galloping, but she was really impressive. You have Sky Ace, who was with Willie Mullins at one stage. She beat Galwa in the Grade 1 Mares Novice Hurdle at Ferryhouse.
I'm going to have to press you.
I'll go with Concertista on the flatter track.
Okay, let's move on to the Ballymore Champion 4-year-old hurdle. And this features Quilixios and Zanahir reopposing from the JCB Triumph Hurdle.
And the third Hawthorne Colour.
Yeah,
and yeah, come on, Lydia. And whatever way you look at it, look, the Triumph was one of those tactical races at the Cheltenham Festival. But I was surprised that what I perceived to be the strongest stayer in Quilixios being able to win the sprint. Yet he was. I think I just had it wrong in my own mind. Look, he got it handy, jumped the first quite well. He settled really well, whereas Zanahir and Hawthorne Colour, between the first and second hurdles, you can see them, they're both a little bit on the bridle and taking each other on. And now Quilixios makes a mistake at the third, kind of an awkward jump, but by the time they get to the top of the hill, to the sixth hurdle, the race hasn't changed much. Quilixios is still in front of Hawthorne Colour. Zanahir is just on his inside. And all the way down the hill, and you're waiting for the sprint. And it's the sprint that catches Zanahir out. And look, obviously he had the first time tongue tie as well. But Quilixius quickened the best off the bend and went. And you could say Rachel was in the right place, Hawthorne Colour, Adagio, but Zanahiyr is the one that gets caught out. And he looked the slowest of them. I actually thought he was the quickest. He looked the slowest in Cheltenham because in the last 100 yards, he's the one that's actually running on. And I wonder, with a change of tactics on Zanahiyr, we saw him winning that really strongly run race back in Ferryhouse in December when he beat St. Sam. You wonder, with a change of tactics and a really forceful ride on Zanahiyr, turned this around.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think that Quilixios always had position A in the Triumph, and he was up against a really inexperienced horse making his debut for Willie Mullins in Hawthorne Colour, who ran a Stormer. And Zanahiyr, the sort of wah was there the moment he had the first time tongue tie. And I felt like he was ridden slightly defensively as well. So I feel that form, you can throw it up in the air and something else might happen.
So do I. It's not until Saturday, but I think something else could happen there too. He's a smashing horse, Quilixius, but I just wouldn't be surprised to see that form completely turned around.
Let's move on to the Boodles Fred Winter, shall we? And have a look at Jeff Kidder and St. Sam.
Yeah, look, obviously, you see them here. We picked them up just going to the last because I think both probably have to improve. Jeff Kidder was a good winner. He had 10-8. St. Sam had 11-8. So you're thinking automatically when this race is over, well, in a conditioned race, St. Sam will turn that around with Jeff Kidder. But Jeff Kidder then went to Ferryhouse and beat Tihupu. So he's obviously improving at a rate of knots as well. St. Sam might add a bit of pace to the race. He was dropped in the Boodles Fred Winter. Back at Punchestown, I could see him going forward, but personally think both have to improve to get up to the trial level.
Yeah, I think they're both improving, but yeah, this is. I think we've got a good set of juveniles. Don't know whether there's an outstanding one. I suppose we might find out here.
Yeah, we will. And look, when all is said and done, if Quilixius can go and win again, he is the outstanding one here. But I do like Monmoral.
Well, quite, yeah. That win at Aintree was superb. By the way, what do you think? Going into Punchestown is the outstanding juvenile performance of the season.
Standing here at Ferryhouse.
Yeah, so do I. Yeah, followed by Monmoral at Aintree.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Just interesting. Right. Okay. So we've gone through the 5 days. I know that your heart is with Paul Townend and Patrick Mullins, understandably, but having assessed all of those races, how do you see the championships ending up?
I think